I'm Sheila Berry Oliver, and I'm the immediate past president of BPW Florida, as well as the current program committee chair. And we would like to welcome everybody to this presentation sponsored by BPW Florida. BPW Florida is an organization that was founded in 1919. We have seven local organizations, which range from Palm Beach Gardens on the East Coast and St. Petersburg on the West Coast down through the Keys. Our programming is focused at two levels. One is at the local level, most of which is in person, and then at the state level, most of which is online, except for when we meet once a year at our annual state conference, which just happens to be June 5th through 7th in Sarasota this year. Our mission is achieving equity for all working women through advocacy, education, and connections. And this program is really germane to our mission of promoting equity for women through education. This particular seminar is presented by a member of BPW who has her own professional employer organization that provides payroll, workers' compensation, insurance, group health insurance, and human resource compliance services. And so at this point, I will turn the program over to Samantha Richman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheila. I will just say that, to be clear, I'm a broker for companies who provide those services. So while I bring them to my clients, my company doesn't provide those services. So in effect, I do. But as an independent agent, I represent the client companies that are looking for those services. With that nice introduction, I think that I will go ahead and share my screen and jump right into the slideshow if everybody's ready for that. And share. Ta-da! Okay, there's me. We already covered that. I do want to say that my approach to this rather large topic is for those who are, yes, hiring for the first time, but I've removed the steps that lead up to the decision to hire, and I kind of leave off once we hire. And there's a lot that goes in between making the decision and getting to the first review of the person once they've been hired, because obviously having an employee is not set it, forget it. So
Samantha, if you could please click on slideshow.
Oh, yes. Did I do from beginning and Zoom slideshow?
That would work.
Okay, well, I can just go ahead and click on the next one. Is that everybody seeing that?
It's not the full screen.
Okay. What was it I need to set on? Click on again?
Just click from beginning.
Yes, there we are.
There we go.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's better for everybody to see.
Okay, yes, it is. Thank you. I came close to getting it right. So very simply, the process is hire, onboard, and administrate. It's pretty simple. And again, like I said, as far as choosing the type of person you want or need and budgeting for that, I'm going to assume that you have met those prerequisites in getting to this point. I do want to take a moment and talk a little bit about the difference between independent contractors versus employees. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me when somebody says, all my employees are independent contractors. It's like pet the cat backwards. That's not a thing. So here is what the Department of Labor has recently re-implemented as a set of questions for business owners to ask themselves when they are determining what the relationship is that they want to have with this individual. Because truly, it's not necessarily what you want, it's the nature of the relationship that drives whether the individual you're paying for a service should in fact be considered an employee or an independent contractor. So, for example, number one, does the worker have an opportunity for profit or loss? Let's think about the Uber driver out there. If he's sitting at the airport and does not have any fares, then he has an opportunity to lose money because he's running his air conditioning in Tampa at the airport with no income. So that would be an independent contractor. You know, does a worker have an investment in the business service they are providing? I have another example for that one. My office is very near some restaurants, and there's a guy that comes around with a van, and he's got a sharpening service, and he sharpens knives for the chefs at the restaurants. He doesn't have an investment in the business. He doesn't work for the business, but he does provide a service, independent contractor. So each of these I can come up with an example for, but if you have any questions, you know, give me an opportunity at the end and we'll go back to them. But I don't want to dwell on each one with a question and answer. You know, do they bring their own tools? Do you tell them when to come to work? Can you tell them to leave? They're done with the job. That's an employee. So again, quick quiz after that little bit of information. Is the intentional misclassification of a worker considered a felony? Now, I will point out that it says intentional. There are disreputable businesses that will intentionally hire independent contractors, knowing that they might be able to pick one from the group that they hire to then become an employee. Let me give you an example. The vacuum salesman. They bring 50 people in a room, give them training and a display book, and set them out on the street and call them independent contractors. So they don't have any incentive, they don't get paid for their time, they don't have any benefits, they don't, if they fail, they fail, and the business owner is out nothing. But those people are integral to selling. If your business is selling vacuum cleaners, those people are integral to the business. I think that would be a fail. I'm not an HR attorney or an SBHR, but I am a licensed agent in a couple of states. So just to kind of, again, touch on the professional level that I'm applying to this, my career has put me in touch with HR personnel and business owners in almost every industry you can imagine, with employees from 5 to 1,600 was the largest group I worked with for 34 years. So I know a lot about the employment relationship, and I've heard a lot of great stories. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole and take too long. Questions to avoid in an interview. So it may seem obvious if you're looking at these in a list format. Let me give you a really good example of how easy it is to put your foot in your mouth. So, Ms. Smith, thank you for coming in for the interview. You have such beautiful eyes. Do you get this from your mom or your dad? You know, and now I'm talking about heritage. I'm talking about family. You know, whether or not maybe that person was raised by 2 mothers and 2 fathers or whatever, but somehow that can be construed as they were discriminating against me because I'm a Caucasian female and I have blue eyes. I mean, I know that sounds like, well, how could they come back at me? It's just an interview. The answer is there is a law for failure to employ, failure to promote. Again, I might be stretching it a little bit, but do you have any children? Again, you just asked me my sexual preference, I guess would be a way to put that. And you may be discriminating against me for that, just with a simple question. So really save those questions for once you've hired the person and it's time to be friendly. But anything that could fall into these categories, you need to try your best to avoid, and think about how you can ask the question in a way that gives you the information that you want. For example, people want to know how reliable their employee is going to be. You can't say, well, are you sick? Do you anticipate going in for any surgery soon? Obviously you can't ask that question, but you can ask them, how many days were you assigned to work in your former position that you were unable to work? And stop and let them answer. And they will give you a lot of information. Now they're going to tell you, oh, well, I have a child with special needs, or I have whatever it might be. and unfortunately may answer the question with more information than you wanted, but at least you'll get them to open up and talk about what is a valid question during the interview and speaking to their consistency and reliability. Keep rolling. A job description. You know, I realize that people are potentially looking at hiring for the first time, and you know, we've all had jobs in the past, but now when you're the employer, kind of have to turn it 180 degrees and go back to what it looks like for the employee. And even if it's a very small operation, putting in place a job description even before you start the hiring process will allow you to better pinpoint the person that you're looking for. And you know, if it's a small operation, you might accept someone who has a certain skill set, but maybe not another. You know, it's great when they can hit a broad bandwidth of the skills that you're looking for, but kind of really need to say, okay, what am I most looking to hire for? And again, the job description will help you do that. It will also help you to determine their strengths and weaknesses. It will, like I was mentioning, also give you a framework for reviewing that individual that you do hire and for their job performance evaluation in the future. And that needs to be done. It needs to be treated in a professional manner. Looking for an employee, there are a lot of places to hire through that cost money. So if you are worried about your budget for this person and growing your business, look for free places. There's a bunch of them out there. And obviously you can network with your BPW members and other associates. I have personally hired friends, children. You know, it's and I'm sorry to use myself for an example all the time, but I am a one-person office with an independent contractor and an employee. So I have one of each at this time. And that the employee position has evolved over the years, but it's basically the person who does the things that I don't want to do. And you know, if they can't do something, or they don't want to do something, or they don't do it well, you know, in a small organization, sometimes you just have to be flexible with that stuff. The hourly rate, I'm looking back down here, trying to get back on my slides. I will point out that the person that you are hiring is going to be hourly unless you have other employees. Wage and hour laws are immense. There's a ton of them. I don't know them all. I do know that in general, if your employee does not supervise other employees, they should be paid hourly. That leads me to the next point. Keep them for several years. I know that there's probably some tax ramification for keeping hours that you record either 3 or 5 years, but it just takes the question of, well, what time did you leave yesterday? Or last Friday, or what? It takes it all out of there. Or when you go to do that review, how many days did that person miss because they were sick or had a sick child or a sick family member? So definitely keep the hours in a place that you're comfortable with, whether that's a computer file that the employee fills out or a notebook that you keep in your desk drawer. Driver's license necessary for the position to side up front, because it is gonna, you know, you can't make somebody get one if they don't happen to have one in the future. Background checks and references. Background checks are tricky because there are tons and tons of databases. You really have to have their written legal permission to do so, and likely it will cost money. And if you can only check one database, what good is it going to do you if the person came from another state? Maybe they were arrested there, maybe they were, you know, a juvenile delinquent. I mean, you're not going to see everything in a background check, and I can't imagine that you're running a bank and you're going to be hiring somebody that's going to handle large amounts of cash or something that you have to have a background check for. Then of course you would do it. And in terms of references, and definitely should on the references, it's surprising what people will volunteer, again, reflection, in talking to someone who has formerly employed a person, some people are very forthcoming with information. Others have been sued because they said the wrong thing about a former employee, and they won't give you very much information. Many of them will give you the bare minimum, which is what were the dates that the employee was employed? What's the start date? What is the termination date? And then if you ask the question, were they fired or did they quit? They can't answer that. The question is this person eligible for rehire? That they can answer and not be sued. So there's your answer. Are they eligible for rehire? Terminated. You've hired, yeah, you finally found somebody. There's going to be a process for that, and there's paperwork involved, and we all love tax forms. So, starting with having the offer and acceptance conversation with the employee, knowing that you're both in agreement. You know, you've at this point, you may have talked to a lot of people, and you may have said, well, the range is $15 to $20 an hour. Well, what you told this person needs to be memorialized on the first day of work. So have that conversation. If you have benefits available, that can be part of the conversation. Remember that a parking space is a benefit, especially in St. Pete. Inform the employee that you will be collecting, the documents for them to, and so here's the thing, you cannot have an employee fill out a W-4 or an I-9 until you have offered them the position and they have tentatively accepted. So I've seen people do this. They'll have a job application and on the back page, there's a W-4. The W-4 asks for marital status. You cannot collect a W-4 until after you have offered the position. So keep that in mind. Your I-9 is going to request that you review the original documents. If someone brings you a copy of their passport and you sign that you saw the original, you have a potential liability. So don't feel like you're putting the employee out because they'll say something like, well, I only have my driver's license. I don't have any other form of ID. Go to the I-9, look at the list. And if they can't provide you with that, at least one or two documents that are listed there, because certain documents, for example, a passport can be offered alone. If you have a driver's license, you also have to have an original birth certificate and a couple of other documents like a Native American certificate or something like that. So if you're not going to collect, you really should be, again, treating this person in a professional manner. And it's not you, it's just you complying with the federal government. If the employee doesn't have those documents to give you, I would say that that's a reflection on that person's maturity. Just a thought. Same with the W-4. The W-4 is not the same W-4 we remember. It has been updated. It's got complicated. It wants to know household income. And the reason for that, ladies and gentlemen, I know this from a professional perspective, is because of healthcare. Healthcare reform and getting insurance on the marketplace requires reporting of household income. So that's become a new term. That's why the W-4 was updated to reflect that and how your taxes are calculated for income tax withholding. Okay, first day of work. We got through the W-4 and I-9. Who to call in an emergency? Again, now you've hired the person. Now you're going to find out who their close net personal friend is or relative or whether or not they're married. You knew it would come. And then a written policy manual. Don't think this is silly, but it gets to where you don't want to keep bugging the person with picayune kind of stuff. For example, I have a problem with somebody eating at their desk. It grosses me out. I don't want to go over there and sit down at a computer that belongs to me that I've issued to the employee to use and find a greasy mouse. So it's my equipment, it's my office. You cannot eat at your desk. I don't care where you eat, but cannot eat it. I shouldn't say I don't care, but can't eat at your desk. It's a policy. It's in the policy manual. Check your policy manual. Obviously, that there's lots of things that need to go in a policy manual, and that'll give you a place, sort of like a repository, so to speak. As you grow and become more sophisticated in your policies, the policy manual will grow. But go ahead and make one that's simple and easy to follow to begin with. And that way the employee feels, again, welcomed, professional. There's a reference, there's a place to reference what it is that they're supposed to be doing, because assumably there's going to be a lot of things for them to learn. Breaks and meals, dress code. Okay, so in preparing for this class, I thought to myself, well, they need to put up those necessary posters. And if you go on the internet and search employment mandated posters, you will see that there are several sponsored companies, because it is complicated. And it's not only is it complicated, there are state specific rules as well as federal rules. What I have put a copy of here and a picture of is the Department of Labor's. So this is what I found when I went searching, excuse me, poster requirements. There was a Q&A section that I went in and followed so that it would give me the answers. So again, not being an attorney, this is what I found. Your poster requirements, screen sharing, so I can't see through it. There they go. The FLSA is like I was talking about, the failure to employ, failure to promote rules, hourly wage. Some of these, it told me that this is what I needed to post with employees between 1 and 10 in Florida in the insurance business. So each of these is a live link. The other thing that, as I was mentioning, there are some state specific, because the state of Florida has a higher minimum wage than the federal. There's the federal, excuse me, the Florida minimum wage form. That's what it looks like. I also have a resource page at the end of the class. I can send it to you that has links to all of my resources. So if you want that, just send me an email and I'll send you a copy of the resources I used for these. So you have your federal, your state of Florida. Oh, hey, what about workers' comp? Do we have to have workers' comp? Again, I went and copied the information from the Florida State Statute 440.0220 in the Florida Book of Statutes. And so construction employers, 1 or more employees, non-construction employers, 4 or more employees who are not business exempt owners. So I'm a non-construction entity. I can exempt myself, which means that I don't have to pay workers' comp premiums on my income if I didn't want to. And because I only have, in fact, 1 W-2 receiving employee, by law, I don't have to have workers' comp. But something to think about is that people do get hurt at work, even in an office environment, even walking to the post office if they're on the clock. And there's no reason that you can't add that to a general liability policy, something to keep in mind. So even if you don't have to have it, if you don't have it and the person gets hurt at work, are you going to pay for their injury, or are you going to let them, I won't say going to let them call Morgan and Morgan, but there, I just said it. So be aware of that, because you may end up being responsible for something a lot more expensive than paying for workers' comp premiums. The least expensive workers' comp premiums and premiums are based on a per $100 of compensation. The per $100 is, when I say percentage, is roughly 20 cents for every $100 a clerical employee makes. So it's really not, I know mine is annually less than 300. So it also covers lost time wages. So if in fact someone gets hurt for real at work and they're unable to come back to work for a week, they may be entitled to lost time wages. So again, another reason why you might think about going ahead and pursuing coverage, even if the law dictates that you could defer it until you grow larger. Payrolls. There it is. Okay, I was looking for the bar at the top. It didn't show it first. Payroll is why people work. How profound is that? And even though I have a great appreciation for payroll and I thoroughly have an inside look at how it works, it can be complicated. And depending on what viewpoint you have, whether you're the employer looking at the gross pay and gross up versus the employee and the gross pay getting adjusted down to net pay. So let me go over this and start with, I've alphabetized it. I like things simple. Accounting for the hours, as I mentioned to you, it's very important to keep track of the hours that the employee works, so there's never any question. That's a problem for people. Read the paper. People get sued for wage and hour violations all the time. I can't imagine that it would happen to anyone on this call in a small company environment, but it does happen. So accrual is the word for the pay period. And I've given an example at the bottom. I think this is most helpful. If you can see all of that, you know, even though the employee doesn't work 7 days, use the calendar and account for the payroll in a standardized format. So if you have a Monday through Sunday pay cycle, cuts off on Sunday, maybe you total all the hours and send it to an accountant or in a payroll service on Tuesday. They send you back an invoice on Wednesday, you pay it. On Thursday, the direct deposit gets made to your account and the employee's account. That's one way. Whatever you set up, keep in mind, it's yours to control. People will get used to what you set up, and that's my experience talking. I can't imagine that an hourly employee would want to go on a bi-weekly schedule, but they may, especially if they're a professional and they're used to that. Even if you went 1st through the 15th, again, count for all the days. If the pay period is the 1st through the 15th, and then you pay 48 hours after the end of the cutoff, what happens if it's a weekend? That goes in your policy manual. Be prepared. By withholding the taxes you account for with gross up costs. So the employer pays, and I'm going to get to this, so don't feel like you need to take a lot of notes. But the employer pays the employee's gross payroll, and using that number, let's say it's $100 in payroll, to pay Social Security, federal unemployment, and state unemployment. On top of that $100, the employee pays federal income tax withholding, Social Security, and if there's any state income tax, or if there's any withholding for child support or anything like that. I didn't even cover that in this class, but their gross is going to go from 100 down to a net of maybe 79, 82, something like that, depending on what they put on that W-4. Calculating the gross to net. Oh, look, I gave an example here that's even more, it's more complicated than my $100 example, but I do have some sample payroll reports to get to next. Some of you are probably accounting professionals or have some accounting background, and it may be less complicated. For those of you who are not, it's not that complicated, but it may be foreign to you to look at it from both sides of the paycheck. So, as I was saying, to be prepared by withholding the taxes to account for the gross up costs. So even though you only have to give the employee $79, it's going to cost you the other 21 plus the employer portion on the gross up. So here is a sample payroll report. These are tax rates, not dollars. So the employer expense for Social Security, which the FICA portion is old age, disability, and then Medicare is 1.45%. Federal unemployment is the same rate for all employers to the first $7,000 of wages per employee per year. In Florida, the state tax rate is driven by the amount of turnover and the length of in business a business has been filing. So after 10 quarters of filing, your tax rate can come down in the state of Florida. This is a tax return, the tax rate that reflects someone who has been filing for over 2 years and is now and has not had anyone claim unemployment or reemployment against the employer, and they're at a 0.1. So that's the lowest you can go. Again, it applies to the first 7,000 in wages, and then the employee's net. So over here we have a gross and a net, and it's not mathematically correct for the reason that this gross includes an independent contractor. So don't worry about trying to balance this page. I just wanted to show the amounts and give you an idea of what I was talking about between gross and net. Here is a clean sheet that you can use to develop your own estimate. I hope everybody got that. I really tried to make it understandable. So now you're thinking, this is complicated. I don't want to do this myself. And I feel you. So Sheila was so kind into introducing me as a PEO broker, which I am, professional employer organization. And the other kind of company out there that processes payroll is there are tons and tons, thousands of different ways to process payroll. Your bank has a way, your accountant has a way, your local software dealer has a way. A payroll company, and I'm going to reverse the way that these appear on the slide so to make it more simple. A payroll company is going to use the federal ID number assigned to the corporation or organization, if it's a if it's an LLC, is going to use that federal ID number to calculate and file the federal and state taxes. So they can help you with the numbers and the facilitating the logistical payment. In other words, they'll make the money flow through the bank to the employee, through the bank to Social Security, to the IRS for the income tax withholding. So that's what a payroll company does. And again, I'm keeping it simple on purpose. We've all heard of ADP, Paychex, Apex, maybe you've heard of, Gusto, maybe you've heard of. Those are payroll companies. A PEO, instead of filing the taxes on behalf of the client company, they put the employees that you hire or the client company hires on their payroll. All of them, owner's wife, every employee that was previously being paid through the client employer is now transferred with the same date of hire, the same longevity, the same rate of pay. If they want to do the same pay cycle, they can do the same pay cycle. The PEO acts like the employer of record, so they file a single tax return for all their client companies under their, meaning the PEO's, federal ID number. There's an exclusive licensure associated with being a professional employer organization. State of Florida does have a statute. You can look it up. It's under the Department of Professional Regulation. That's what it is. And so it is a unique industry. And because I'm in it, I feel like it's really important to know the difference. Because people will sometimes call a PEO a payroll company because they are doing the payroll, but they're not managing the employee. You hire, you terminate, you set wage. I say you, the client company, gets all of those control features, the job performance evaluation, the job description. Again, all the things that make and give flavor to the client company remain in-house. The professional employer just takes care of dealing with the taxing authorities, provides workers' compensation, and if the employees want or need benefits and the employer is willing to bear the expense for those, because surely there is an expense for benefits, the PEO buys them and transfers their policies, not transfers, but allows the client to participate on their large policy. Same with the 401k. They can provide a 401k where it's what they call a multiple employer plan. That's one of those fancy IRS acronyms. It's a MEP plan. A multiple employer plan means that everybody gets filed on the same documents, so you don't have to pay somebody to do all those things for you. You're sharing in the cost of a large environment, and therefore the economies of scale come into play. Skip ahead. Oh, look, we're at the end. There I am. And look, I put something at the very end to wake you up. Who doesn't like kitties and puppies?